Our next guest is an author and a graduate of the College of William and Mary. Her new novel is called The Book of Summer. Last week, Michelle Gable was one of 6 authors honored and recognized at the Junior League of Richmond's 72nd Annual Book and Author Dinner. We say good morning to Michelle and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. It's so nice. You're a Californian by birth, but you went to college here in Virginia and have an affinity for Virginia. What was it like to be invited to come to the Book and Author Dinner?
Well, the Book and Author Dinner is a long tradition, as you said, and it was such an honor. I couldn't believe it. I have such a place in my heart for Virginia. To me, it's my second home, and the authors that have been invited over the years are just a list of the biggest names, in my opinion. And I was surprised. Richmond, your readers here, it's a huge group. It's a much bigger group than we would get in San Diego. So I was in awe.
Yeah, it must be nice to know that there are 1,000 people who love to read, sitting in a room listening to what you have to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was so impressed. The questions were great. The people were wonderful, and the mix of authors was phenomenal.
Well, that's great. You've been a writer since you were a little girl, and it all started with a book, I understand, that your parents gave you.
Yes, they gave me a book called Someday You'll Write, and for my 10th birthday, and from that day on, I wrote and I wrote and I wrote all through school, middle school, high school, college, William and Mary. And it was just something I started from a young age. And when my first book came out, nearly 30 years later, my parents re-gifted me the same book.
Oh.
And it was all torn up by a dog, and it had all my little 10-year-old notes in it, but it was a really special moment.
They were right, but you did kind of go off to a different career in finance before you actually said, maybe I can really be a published writer. And your first book won an award.
Yeah. So my first book ended up being a New York Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller, and I worked for 20 years in finance, and writing was just something I did on the side. I knew I couldn't do the starving artist thing. You know, I had to make my own living. And finally, I decided to try to do something with it. And after 6 to 7 years of lots of rejections and heartaches, and you name it, you name the calamity, it happened. But I finally had my first book come out in 2014. Well,
congratulations on that. And the new book is out this week. The first 2 books were set in Paris.
Yes.
And this new book is set on the East Coast of the United States. And I understand the idea for this book came from something that you read.
Yep. As with all my books, it's based on a true story or a real person or real nugget of information that I take and expand a story around. And I had read an article in Vanity Fair about the homes in Sconset on the easternmost side of Nantucket, which they've been in families for generations, and they've been built on this bluff, but due to erosion, they're falling over the bluff. And I thought that was such an evocative image, and there's such strife because some people think that they can buttress the bluff and move buildings closer to the road and fix things, whereas others say, don't mess with Mother Nature. And it was an interesting push and pull. So I knew immediately I had to set a story in one of these homes. And in my book, it's a home that's been in a family for 99 years, and it's in danger of falling over the bluff.
And there's a guest book, because this was a kind of a hotel or bed and breakfast at one point, and you kind of give us 2 generations of women and the stories of them in the Cliff House.
Yes, so it's called the Cliff House, is what they've named their house, and it's been in this family, as I said, for 99 years, and they've had friends and acquaintances stay at this house, and they've asked. They never charge anything, but they ask, write an entry in the guest book, not just your name. And that was the way that I like to weave together historical and contemporary storylines. And that was a way to tie it all together, because we have a historical storyline of the people trying to save their house. And then it goes back in time to just as we're entering World War II and at the early years of World War II. And we enter that world through the guest book. And I wanted to show World War II from a stateside perspective, because it's usually so often set in Europe.
And for you, for research purposes, how difficult was that?
It was very challenging. I had to go to Nantucket several times. I will only set books in nice places that
like Paris, yeah.
And we even last summer, I took my family and we even stayed on Baxter Road, which is where my characters live.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. And again, we talked about the fact that this was just published on Tuesday, so this is brand new for you.
It is brand new. It is brand new.
That's going to be pretty exciting.
It is really exciting. I love getting out and talking to people about it. I really enjoyed writing this book. It was pure fun. from the first page, and it was it's my favorite of my three I've written.
Well, thank you, Michelle. We keep going. Well, you can meet Michelle Gable at her book signing that's coming up tonight at Fountain Bookstore in Shockoe Slip. The event begins at 6:30. You can find out more about the Book of Summer and what it takes to do historical fiction and writing. Michelle is very open to answering questions. Thank you so much for joining us.